about a heaven in Alberta, where they've got all hell for abasements. Yeah, I lost my way, but I hear tell about a heaven in Alberta, where they've got all hell for abasements.
Hi, everyone. Frankie here. New West Reset. Hello. How's it going? How's it going? Welcome back. Thank you very much for shooting in, joining a fella here for another one, another live stream. New West Reset live episode, where are we? Episode 68? Is that right? Wow, nice. Episode 68 here tonight. Anomalous areas in Alberta. We're going to look at some weird stuff. Wow, that's some weird, wild stuff. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me here on the Sunday edition of the show. Sunday, June the 2nd, 2024. Wow, just went through a time vortex there for a split second. Sorry. June 2nd, 2024. There we go. 7 p.m. local time, mountain time. And as always, we're coming at you live from Calgary, here in southwestern Alberta. Purdy Alberti. She's purdy out here, especially today, up here in Canada land, in Canadadia, eh, bud? So welcome. 18 degrees Celsius right now. That's like right around 70-ish Fahrenheit. So not bad, not bad. Partly sunny. Just got back from a trip to even more southernerist Alberta, Pincher Creek, Alberta. And it was a beautiful weekend there too. Windy as hell down there. You know how they call, Chicago, Illinois in the U.S., the Windy City? Well, Pincher Creek is that whole area, Pincher Creek and Lethbridge, like that whole southern Alberta region, especially the western portion. It's like the Chicago, Illinois of Canada land down there. Wow. They got all kinds of wind turbines down there, like thousands of them. Anyway, it was a great trip. A little bit of a twofer for a fella down there. My niece graduating from high school down there, so that was lovely. And my older niece, I have 4 nieces, by the way. My sister and brother-in-law have 4 girls. My 2 older nieces are married and have kids of their own. My eldest niece had 2 girls, has 2 girls. So I have 2 great nieces. My next down of the 4, the next oldest niece, she and her husband just had their second boy 2 weeks ago. So went down there to make his acquaintance as well. So yeah, high school graduation and meeting the new little feller in the family, in the Frankie Fingers clan over here, eh? Hey, we got another new member of the family over here, eh? To join the Frankie Fingers family. So now you know what I'm talking about with the whole New West Reset thing. No. What? No. What I said about Frankie Fingers. That Frankie Fingers and New West Reset are the same. Wait, what?
Oh yeah,
said she don't stand no cheating. She don't stand none of that.
So yeah, it was a nice trip. Nice trip, you know. Bit of a road trip. It's a roughly 2-hour drive south of where I am, southwest of where I am, real close to the mountains, even closer than I am to the Canadian Rockies. Maybe, you know, half the distance closer. Anyway, I don't drive, so it makes road trips difficult for a guy, unless I rode my bicycle down there, which would take me 2 days. So caught a ride with the parental units, my mom and dad, my mama and daddy. And you know what? No hotel or motel rooms to be had for either or both nights of the weekend, Friday night and Saturday night. None. Zero. Great. Great. Love that. But it's a small town, right? And let's face it, not much going on down there. There's some agriculture in terms of cattle and some grain, cereals, farmage going on down there in terms of wheat, oats, and barley, and I think a bit of canola. But other than that, not much. Bit of oil down there. You know, much like the rest of southern Alberta. But such a small town, right? I think 2,000, maybe 2,500 peoples is down there. So with the only high school having its graduation, and pretty much everybody's coming from out of town, except for maybe immediate family, right? But aunties and uncles and grandparents and godparents and whatnot, the chances are they're coming from at least Lethbridge or Fort Macleod or something. So the rooms got booked up. So we decided, well, there's a campground that's actually right in the town limits. There's 2 campgrounds, one outside of town, but one right in the town limits. The town of Pincher Creek, literally named after a creek that meanders through the middle of the town. Well, not really the middle. Most of the town is built up on one side of the creek and a bit on the other side. So the campground is also on the other side, but still in the town limits. So not far to come to go to the graduation ceremony and then to visit family. So we kind of made it a mini family reunion thing and stayed in this campground. So mom and dad picked me up in the pickup truck pulling the trailer, the camper trailer, at 2 hours down the highway. Me in the back seat like a hostage. Great. But not kidding. It was a good time. It was nice to see my sister and brother-in-law. I hadn't seen them for a few months. And, you know, meet the new little bambino. So, yeah, it was great. The graduation was great. Too many speeches, of course. And it's like, really, can we just see them get their diplomas and throw their hats and maybe have the valedictorian make a speech and maybe the school principal, she can make her speech, and then let's just skedaddle and have some fun at a barbecue. But no, you know, it's like a 2 or 3 hour thing. Which, but it was great for my niece. She looked lovely and she had a great time. So yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Didn't get a chance to get a lot of footage down there for you, unfortunately. I did last time I was down there. This time there's a couple of other places I had wanted to check out. 2 things happened. One, didn't have time. But also, secondly, a lot of the places that I had looked at on the Goggle Maps and remembered seeing in the past visits to Pincher Creek are gone. The old hotel that was right on Main Street, built, I think, right around 1900-ish, burnt down. Yep, big surprise. So now there's just a gravel parking lot there. Beautiful. And another building is now not in its original spot. They dismantled it and moved it to a little pioneer village park that they have set up there. You know, where it's like a museum, but also set up like a little village. Apparently they moved it there, about a mile downriver. Still in the town, but I'm like, really? Well, okay. Maybe they're widening that road that it was on, because it's a double lane going either direction. It merges to a single lane going either direction as it goes over the bridge of the creek itself. and then goes back to 4 lanes, right? 2 each way on the other side of the bridge. So I think they want to widen it because it's right where the bridge, just on the other side of the bridge, was this building. And it was still 2 lanes there. So I think they wanted to widen it and put a wider bridge in there. 4-lane bridge, eh? You know, like the big city folk have. So they moved the building rather than destroying it, which, hey, there you go. That's a good thing. But all in all, a fun trip, a good trip. No major mishaps. Nothing major. Nothing bad happened. You know, it was good. It was nice. But I missed you folks on Friday. A fella missed you fine folks on Friday. But I did have a great trip. It's great to be here. And thank you very much for joining me. Once again, as mentioned on this Sunday edition of New West Reset Live. So Sunday fun day, I guess. Sunday fun day it is. So hopefully, the guy didn't even do his sound check. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Everything's coming in loud and clear and whatnot. Anyway, speaking of all of you, say howdy in the box, in the chat. Let me know where you're shooting in from. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please give a fella one of these. You know, it just helps to push a guy out into the algorithm a little bit as we make our way to 2,000 subscribers. Thank you very much for helping me reach the 1,500 mark. We're a couple of weeks away, it looks like, here for the meetup mid-June, for the 1,500 subscriber celebration, which is really just me using that number as an excuse to have another summer meetup with any of you that want to meet up with a guy, and we can tour around parts of the city looking at old world buildings. Last year we did Stephen Avenue, 8th Avenue downtown here in Calgary. Calgary, eh? No, that's not how you say it. Calgary. Anyway. And that was great. It was 6 city blocks-ish. This time around, Inglewood, Calgary. Speaking of other side of the rivers, just on the other side of the Elbow River in Inglewood, just beyond Fort Calgary. So that'll be great. Pretty much looking at absolute 75% absolute. That doesn't make sense, but June 16th, which is a Sunday. So if you live in Calgary and want to meet up, would love to have you join a guy there for a mudflood walkabout of Inglewood. Old churches, an old fire hall, old school, tons of old buildings, brick, sandstone, houses. It's fantastic. Even an old convent. Yes, an old convent as well. Anyway, let's say hello. Who, what, and where's have we got going on here? I saw Toidle here. Yeah. Toidle, of course. Toidle's here. Thanks for shooting in. Kathy Childers in the box. Howdy from Kentucky, the Bluegrass State, Kathy. Hey, there's Teresa, our new friend of the channel, Teresa Lilly. Hiya, hands. Hey, Frankie Fingers, if you don't mind. Over here, if I may be so bold. So, Tommy, where have you been, huh? I've been watching New West Reset. Huh? Well, you know, it's New West Reset. It's this thing on YouTube. He goes around, he does his boots on the ground thing. They'll tell you. Say you care. Henry is here as well. Henry Maldonado. Welcome. Hiya, hippie. Hippie shaking the box. And Jabberoo Joe. Good to see you, bro. Howdy, howdy. Thanks for shooting in. I think I saw cousin Vinny here shooting in somewhere as well. Cousin Vinny joined me for the meetup last year's is, and I think he's gonna be. Miss Frankie so much. I sent him about 100 texts. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, Vinny was there last year. He's going to be shooting in with a guy for the mudflood walkabout of Inglewood this year. So yeah, it's looking like the 16th. Again, not. I mean, this is there anything could happen, but we're looking at Sunday, June 16th. Don't know. I don't have an exact time yet, but there you go. Bill Pals is here, my pal Bill. Dragon Sage is in the box as well. Oh, he says 5x5. Thank you. Sound check. Beauty, eh? Morgan's here as well. Isabella Live 2.0. 2.0. Sounds weird to say 2.0. I don't know why. It's just odd to a guy. So tonight we're going to be looking at some weird and wonderful stuff here in Alberta. And actually what brought this to mind was knowing the trip I was going to be taking this weekend. I knew we'd be passing through some small prairie towns that have these soon to be almost gone, completely destroyed and forgotten. They were known as the skyscrapers of the prairies, the grain elevators. But I'm not talking about the newfangled cylindrical multi-billion-dollar grain elevator systems that you see at the seaports or at major railway hub. No, I'm talking about these little prairie towns, in some cases 50 to 100 people, but more often than not, roughly about 1,000-ish, 500 to 1,000, 1,500 people maybe. But they have between one and in some cases up to 5 or 6 in their history of these huge grain elevators, wooden structure. Now, I want to stress here, it's not my proposition or belief or thought that these are old world buildings, but they are old in the sense that from the 1870s-ish until roughly the 1970s, maybe a little beyond, some still exist, but they're disappearing quickly. These were buildings that were used. It's an older technology. It's a mechanical technology using, steam or diesel engines to power conveyor belts and different conveyance equipment to haul grain up to load it down into train cars. So these grain elevators are always next to railroad tracks. And they were real big here in the prairies, obviously, because of the industry, the agricultural industry. We have cattle and we have oil. These are huge, but grain too. We're the breadbasket of Canadian land up here, eh? Much like the Midwest of the U.S. So I knew we'd be passing towns that had some of these or had a history of having a lot of these. A little town could have 5 of these things, more than the houses of the residents in the town. And it's because it was along the rail line. So you'd have a town along the rail line, but then you'd have these grain elevators shooting up along the rail line as well. But they're going quickly. And it's something that I know is just following suit into a lot of the things that we hear on this channel and other channels, in this sort of research community where we look into the old world. It's eventually going to fall into that category, right? It's going to become something that is of a newer technology than what we look at, but the narrative is the same. We're slowly going to wipe it out of history. It's going to get harder and harder to find towns or cities that still have them. I mean, when we moved into Calgary from Montreal in 1980, there were still a bunch of them in Calgary. A year later, when the house in the town that my parents still live in now, just north of Calgary, was finished being built, and we all moved there, and my parents still live there. That was our permanent home, just outside of Calgary. Didn't really want to live right in the big city, right? But that little town, I think there was 5,000 people when we moved there. It had 3 grain elevators. Now they're gone. So much like what we look at in the pre-reset old world with their tech and their structures. This is post-reset, but it's being wiped out because now it's coming on, roughly 100 years, maybe a bit more since some of the oldest ones, 150 years maybe at the oldest, that some of these buildings were first erected and put into use. Yeah, yeah. Oh, no Flatterday either. Hippie Shake saying this week was odd. No Frankie on Friday or Martin Liedke on Saturday. It's been quiet. Oh, I see. No Martin on Saturday. See, the getting back to what cousin Vinny was getting at about sending tons of messages. There was crappy cell service, at least the cell provider that I signed up with for my cell phone. Cell service down there was sporadic and crappy. And my sister and brother-in-law live on a little bit more. The community they live in is on a little bit more of a hill or at the top of a sort of a Pincher Creek proper itself, because it's a creek. It's actually the town is in an old, what they call an ancient riverbed, right? From the melting of the glaciers from the previous ice age and whatnot, science, whatever is what they say, right? And it started off as a big torrential river of glacial runoff and eventually trickled down to what today, whatever, 10,000 years later or whatever they're telling us, is now just a creek. 10 feet deep, 20 feet across, boom, a creek. And the town is now built in this valley. But my sister and brother-in-law's place is sort of up almost at the top of the prairie, at the top of the river valley. Maybe 7/8 the way up the hill. It doesn't matter. So I thought, up here I'll get some good cell reception. No. Down at the campground we were staying, which was like I said, right in town. Nope. Up at the community center, one would think, where the community hall, the big place where all the hubbub goes on in your city or town, right? I figured, surely here. Nope. Bubkiss. It wasn't until we were headed home and we got 2 towns north and closer to Calgary that all of a sudden I went from 1 bar or no bars to big 4 bars, 4 out of 5. I'm like, well, we're looky here. And then notifications coming in like wildfire on my texts on the phone. And a couple of them were cousin Vinny sharing photos and showing places in Pincher Creek, places that I had coincidentally wanted to check out and are now gone or moved. So I'm trying to answer in hindsight, and of course, it just wasn't the best. So a drawback in a lot of ways, staying in touch in terms of self-service and probably spotty internet too, because I tried the Wi-Fi at my sister's to no avail. But anyways, it's two-sided coin, but in a small town, it's nice because it's quiet and it's quaint and you don't have a lot of crime and whatnot. But the downside is if it's out in the middle of nowhere, your cell and internet service might be dodgy at best. Anyway, that whole trip made me think of the grain elevators. And so then a guy was on the Goggle Maps, and I was looking for towns and using that as a reference point for towns in southern Alberta, most especially, but pretty much all of Alberta that still had their old wooden grain elevators that hadn't been knocked down yet. There's quite a few, but they're quickly dwindling, as mentioned. But while I was on the Goggle Maps, I noticed some other weird peculiarity or rarity. And it's aside from the grain elevators or the buffalo rubbing stones, which we've looked at here. It's this weird geographical Well, it's right there in the title. It's an anomaly, man. So we're going to definitely have a peekaboo at that. Hook your ocular sphericals onto that. Of course, links for everything in the rectangular description box below for the Wikipedia and a couple of articles we're going to look at, as well as my location map for every place I've done boots on the ground here in Calgary and in other parts of southern Alberta, including Pincher Creek, as well as links to a guy's PayPal, should you care to buy a guy a coffee or pay for gas for the next road trip or a bus ticket up to Edmonton, or I don't know. Anyway, it's whatever you may care to do. Links for that below, as well as a guy's MeWe, BitChute, Rumble. Of course, we're broadcasting live simultaneously in both the fighting platform and the HooTubes. My email's there as well, so if you want to get a hold of me again and get some more information about the meetup, if you're going to be in the Calgary area in Calgary on that weekend, or if you live here in Calgary and you want to meet a guy, and I don't know, maybe we'll have a coffee and a walkabout, go on walkabout. Maybe we'll have a wobbly pop after a walkabout. I don't know. Maybe we'll grab a nice Alberta burger, Alberta beef burger, or an Alberta steak. So yeah, links for everything below. I'm pretty sure it's beautiful out, so I'm pretty sure we're going to hear a siren pretty soon. Anyway, I think we're going to kind of, normally when on the channel, if we get into a format, which I don't really have a strict format, let's face it, the guy's just goofing around over here. All right?
All right, we're having a good time. And
I'd just like to have a little fun with you, but normally we might look at, the Google Maps and some Wikipedia and then look at the photos. This time we're going to have a look at a couple of photos, then the Wikipedia, and then the maps. So just like the flip from the Friday to the Sunday for this week, we're flipping the order of the show. I know, it's gripping entertainment for everybody. Howdy, Sage. Well, guy does what he can. Anyways, welcome. Thanks for joining me here. Without further ado, let's quit screwing around over here. And let's have a look, see what we're going to see with some photographs first and foremost. Again, thanks for shooting in and joining me on the Sunday edition of the show there, eh? Other live streams in our community going on right now. So if you're over here instead of over there, wow, thank you. Appreciate it. Normally I would say thanks for kicking off your weekend with me, but thanks for winding down your weekend with me. So that's nice. So we've seen this kind of stuff in Alberta before, right? I mentioned the buffalo rubbing stones. Vinny and I, cousin Vinny over here, I always get there it is. We always get a good chuckle out of it. But stuff like this we've talked about in Alberta, right? The glacial anomalies. Supposedly, these are giant boulders. This is Big Rock in Okotoks in southern Alberta, about 45 minutes south of where I is in Calgary. Yeah, supposedly it's split, too, from the forces of the glacier moving this. Apparently, this was trapped and suspended in ice in the glacier, and as it receded and melted, it just randomly left these giant boulders in the middle of the fairly flat prairies, some rolling foothills here, but so we've mentioned that kind of stuff before. This is one that's in Airdrie. And then there's a couple right here in Calgary as well. This one is Nose Hill here in Calgary. So yeah, I just left them here. Somehow it split them. Somehow it made these interesting, flatter, more tile-like ones somehow, but anyway, we've seen this kind of thing here before. We've been through Airdrie too. Oh, used to work in Okotoks. Well, you know the area, right? So you know exactly where I'm talking about. I mean, I guess it's not going to really dox a guy if I say that's actually where my parents still live. That's where their house is in Airdrie. That's where a guy basically grew up. We moved from Montreal to Calgary. And then, like I said, about a year later when the house was done, moved to Airdrie. But this is what I'm talking about when I say grain elevators. It's these old wooden framed, wooden structure grain elevators. It's not the modern metallic cylindrical ones that you see pressed right up tight against one another, This is here, obviously, in southern Alberta. And this is from 1913. So you can see no automobile yet. I mean, there's steam power and diesel engine power by this point, but an automobile, but just, I mean, not out here. You're not going to get, you might have somebody have a car, but a car isn't going to get you much use with this, right? You'd need a steam truck or a diesel truck, and that's pretty rare and probably expensive for these buggers. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, horse and wagon it is to load the grain, and it goes up the grain elevator, and then the train comes along, and it loads the trains with the grain. And they have one of these set up at Heritage Park, where cousin Vinny and I went last summer. Check the channel for that footage, by the way. We do a big walkabout of Heritage Park. It's about an hour. But yeah, you can see here. I mean, it's very simple steam engine belt driven technology. Again, some kind of conveyance. Sometimes it's a belt. Sometimes it's some kind of basket or bucket and pulley system that brings it up to a hopper and fills the hopper. And then once the train comes underneath here, they swing an arm out and open up the hopper, and the grain falls down a chute into the train cars. But you can see they're huge. I mean, these are massive. You can see why they call them the skyscrapers of the prairies. Look how flat ass this background is. And these were in Manitoba and Saskatchewan as well, of course. And I'm sure these were in Montana and, Idaho and Kansas and wherever the American breadbasket is. But these things were, like skyscrapers, literally. You can see a comparison to the train station building here, 2-floor, 2-story wooden frame train station, and then boom, or even these in the background, they're just huge. So this little tiny little town, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 grain elevators. And unfortunately, the thing is that a lot of these little towns, much like the story with any little town, hinged on 1 or 2 industries, right? So these little towns basically hinge on the railroad and these grain elevators being here. Once these are torn down or removed or destroyed or become obsolete because they're not properly maintained, the town all becomes a ghost town. It all but disappears. Even though the train may still run through here, it may no longer stop at the grain elevators because they're now gone. Maybe it's been moved to a more central location, and it's those more modern style of grain elevators. I was getting more into the 20s and 30s at this point, but you can see, again, just huge. And different grain companies owned and operated different grain elevators. So they would build and operate and maintain their own buildings. So yeah, you'll have a little town like this with, a one-sided main street, a couple of cute little small-scale old world buildings. One wonders how all this brick and glass and stone, whatever this is, limestone, sandstone, got out here. Well, maybe the railroad could transport it, but if these were built pre-railroad, like is the narrative in a lot of these prairie towns. This is Tabor, by the way. It's never been that big. It's kind of more famous for corn than anything. You can see you got this, and then again, here's your main street. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 sort of commercial buildings. And 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. So almost as many grain elevators as buildings that make up your downtown. There's an oil rig in the background. They're oil drilling for oil. And again, this is fairly late on. This is the 40s here now. But here's a sort of thing that you have to deal with. Now, could you imagine you're a grain farmer? You got to bring your grain to the grain elevator after it's been sold at auction and you've gotten your price for it. Then you got to bring it to the grain elevator. So you got to have your horse pull your wagon with whatever grain, bring it up this sort of a dirt ramp that they've built into this facility. And not all of them were this big like this, but and then your grain's unloaded into a hopper, usually underneath, which is why you are raised up. It goes into a hopper underneath, and then some kind of conveyance system powered by whatever you have, I guess, brings the grain up to the next, and it fills up the upper hopper. The train comes in, and it's loaded in. But look at what you got to contend with, all these muddy streets. This is chaos. Like, who's next? Like, is it a deli? You pick a number. I want a pastrami on rye. Number 87. Now serving number 86. Oh, boy, I'm next. I can't wait to get my pastrami on rye. I'm waiting in this lineup, this chaotic lineup in the deli. At the bakery, ordering a birthday cake for your kid or whatever. Holding your ticket. Oh, I'm next. They're going to call me next. But look at this. It's a fiasco. It's a fiasco. Your horse has got to pull hundreds of pounds, if not about a ton, of grain through this muddy, wet, or maybe melted snow, or maybe icy shit, and then get it through all this chaos somehow, and then get it. Like, I have no idea what is even going on in this photograph. Wow. Right? It's, it's not me that's crazy. It's this photograph is crazy, right? And again, small town, and there's at least 3 grain elevators there, maybe even one more back here. This guy was smart. He's like, I'm going to go down the line a bit, away from the chaos over there, bud. Guys are nuts down the line there. Rothrod's in the box. Welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, and then what do you do, right? Because you're sitting here, so you're sinking. I mean, if the horses or the mules are just pulling you through, yeah, mule, come on now, mule, yeah, now, mule, then you're fine, right? You got momentum, it can pull you through, especially if you got a team of 2 horses or 2 mules. You're in business. Come on now, Jim and Jake. Here now, Jim and Jake. Get on up there now, right? No problem. But if you got to unhitch your horses for whatever reason, this thing's sinking, and then to try to get it going again, fat chance, Farmer Jones. But then inevitably what happens? They're destroyed. They're torn down. They become obsolete because they're allowed to degenerate, much like, inner city ghettos, the buildings in Detroit or Chicago or St. Louis. or parts of Vancouver or Toronto here in Canada. Entire neighborhoods are allowed to become ghettos so they can lower the property value and knock down the old world buildings. Same here. The only difference is, again, these are not old world buildings. These are buildings from about 150 years ago to, well, some still stand today, but not many. So these are post-reset, but perhaps reusing pre-reset technology to power the conveyance systems, right? Like they could have been using old turbine or dynamo or steam or diesel-powered engines that were just reverse engineered and retrofitted after the reset, and then incorporated as motors to power stuff like grain elevators or whatever the case may be. Factories, different machines in different factories. But of course, the other thing is, they catch fire and they burn down, which is maybe a little bit more reasonable and easier to accept because, again, these are wood frame structures. The only thing that isn't wood in these things is the machinery inside. So these things, as you can imagine, go up like a tinderbox, right? Like a book of matches. Poof. Especially in the flat prairie where it's windy, like I was talking about with Pincher Creek and Lethbridge and Fort McLeod and all that. Medicine Hat. You can see just the wind just hits that, and it's all wood, so it's just like a campfire. Well, of course, horses were tough back then, especially the Canadian horses. Ed, eh? It's it's Fred's Canadian cousin. So, whoop, I kind of let the cat out of the bag with this here, but that's okay. So, I mean, that's something that's disappearing quickly here in Alberta. And there used to be literally thousands and thousands of grain elevators all over Alberta. And now there's a few hundred. Now, in some cases, sure. I mean, the train doesn't need to stop in that area to use those grain elevators anymore. In some cases, now with more modern trains that can travel greater distances in shorter amounts of time, you don't have to worry about making as many stops because you can travel larger distances. So you can go from larger towns or even cities more quickly, from city to city, and you don't have to stop in these little isolated little communities, right? Let me just I just want to pull up on the Google Maps here. I just found quite a few towns left here in Alberta that still have the existing old wood-framed grain elevators. Now they're no longer in operation. Well, I think in some cases a few are, but for the most part, they're either standing derelict or a minimal amount of maintenance is put into them, and then they're a sort of a tourist attraction, right? Maybe they built some kind of railway museum or agricultural farming museum around this town's one grain elevator that they were able to save, right? Well, yeah, of course, but now they're able to ship the grain to the grain elevators much more efficiently too, because of the farming equipment is advanced along with all the other technology. So you can harvest the grain more quickly. I mean, the grow time is the same, obviously, but you can harvest it more quickly and efficiently. And you can get it from the farm to the grain elevators more quickly. So therefore, there doesn't need to be as many stops for the trains, and there doesn't need to be as many grain elevators in as many small towns. Now, that said, there's still, towns of 500 people that still have like 4 functioning grain elevators. but not hundreds of little prairie towns that have between 2 and 5 or even 6 like there used to be. And again, I'm talking some of these towns were and still are small towns, like the photos we were looking at. So I got the goggle maps here, and I sort of pinned a few places. Is that what it is? Pinned? Bookmarked? No, pinned. Pinned. A guy pinned a couple of places here that we can have a look at on the goggle maps. So you can see here on Canada land here, and there's Alberta. So I'm in here in Calgary. And again, there's a few more than these, but these are just a few that I pinned. Now, this is where I headed for the weekend, down here to Pincher Creek. So along the way, there are some towns like Claresholm that has grain elevators, as well as Fort McLeod and Nanton. But Nanton is going to be a separate road trip, boots on the ground thing coming up later, maybe in the summer or something. So I didn't want to focus too much on this strip between Calgary and Pincher Creek, although there is a lot of grain elevators, but that's another show, shall we say. But yeah, they're like little towns, places that aren't even there anymore, like this. You know, Rayleigh grain elevator. Rayleigh, I'm thinking. But I don't even know if I can drop the guy down on. Yeah, see, a lot of these places I can't even drop the Google guy down on the goggle map. You know what I mean? The goggle machine won't even let a guy get down there. So you get, in some cases, you get lucky, and they'll at least throw up the photo of this grain elevator. But you can see the train doesn't even run here anymore. They've got a railway avenue, but there's no track anymore. They just have the grain elevator here. See, it's not even letting me zoom in on it, but yeah, there isn't even a town really here anymore. It's just in the middle, like literally in the middle of nowhere. So it's, I mean, the train isn't going to stop here anymore, you know? It might stop here in Cardston or somewhere else. This, at least, there's still a little bit of a town here, this McGrath. I think this one, it'll yeah, this one at least it'll, problems with my mouse here tonight. I think a guy's got to get a new mouse for the computer. It's acting up. See? It's not operator error. Trust me, it's equipment error. This, I think, has some new and some old. Yeah, see, these are all the new ones. See these big sort of cylindrical things, but they do have an old one down here. And if you maintain the old ones and just update the equipment inside, then it serves the same function. But this one here is no longer in use. You can see how you got to go up, and then underneath is the hopper. So you unload, and then up it goes. And then the train comes along. Some of them, they're built over the train track. You know, some of them, it's got a sort of a swing arm that comes out. It's basically like a giant tap in your kitchen sink, and the grain comes out of that, or the corn, or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's just tons of those places everywhere. By the way, there's a lot of Indian territory, shall we say, Canadian Indigenous First Nations. There's a lot of sort of, you know, reservations or reserves here. So as a result, there's not a lot of big cities or towns either. I mean, Lethbridge is a good size, and Medicine Hat. But other than that, there aren't really tons. You know what I mean? See, this thing's acting up on me because now it's not. It's not showing my pinned places here now. There we go. Ah, goggle. See, Drumheller, I mean, that's still a town. We've looked at that on the channel here before with the hoodoos, and this is a sort of when you look at it, it's kind of a cooked out, fried. It looks like something bad happened around here. Yeah, this is about as close as they'll let a guy drop for their grain elevator. But you can see here, even the track again is gone. They may still have the street name, might be like Railway Street, Railway Avenue, but the track is gone. Not even just abandoned, but a lot of times the track is even pulled up. So for this place where it is, I mean, there's just no reason to maintain it, right? So this is going to be eventually just fall over, or it's going to mysteriously burn down, or they're just going to knock it down. Let's see, here's one here. It's Railway Avenue. But the railway isn't even there anymore. It's just set up as sort of a museum. At least this one, they'll let a guy. Yeah, see, this one's set up like a little museum. So maybe they've gotten some funding, or maybe they did some fundraising locally, and they were able to sort of make sure it's structurally sound and slap a coat of paint on her and, leave some section of the track and have, some old, here's an old caboose, for example, and, there's an old plow or something. Fine. But more often than not, these are just so dilapidated, as we've seen actually in some of the photos. That, I mean, the breeze is going to knock it over, you know what I'm saying? So here's one that they're calling Great Northern Grain Killam Terminal. So this supposedly is supposed to be some kind of big deal. Sorry. Forgive me here, folks. There we go. Holy smokes! Got a trucker there, buddy. Hey, give us one of these. Come on, buddy. Hey, buddy. Now, whatever you do, don't urinate in an iced tea bottle and throw it out the window. That's not nice. Okay, so see, this is the more of a modern setup of the old wooden rickety ones, although it looks like maybe, yeah, they've sort of potentially, this is the older original wooden grain elevator, and they've renovated it and maintained it really well, I should say, and then now they've got the more modern version here all ready to go, right? So these are replacing the old wooden ones. And it's kind of a bummer, man. And again, they're not old world or anything, but it follows that same sort of narrative, And these things are just everywhere. And a lot of them are just in the middle of nowhere. Like here, but Lesser Slave Lake. I mean, there's really nothing here at all. Man, this thing is bugging me. Come on now. Work with me here, you. For the love of Pete. You see, again, they pulled the rail up. So the railroad ain't even going through here no more. Come on, trees. Get out of the way, trees. Anyway, you're getting the idea. So yeah, kind of a shame. They're going the way of the dodo, if you will, you know? So let's have a look real quick here at just exactly what the Wikipedia says about a grain elevator. It's a facility designed to stockpile or store grain, excuse me. In the grain trade, the term grain elevator also describes a tower, okay, here we go, containing a bucket elevator or pneumatic conveyor. Why they're showing, I guess that's what's also used in automobile assembly lines. But yeah, this sort of thing, right? Where it's like a conveyor belt, but instead of a belt, there's buckets on the belt or replacing the belt. Anyway, it scoops up grain from a lower level and deposits it in a silo or other storage facility. In most cases, the term grain elevator also describes the entire elevator complex, including receiving and testing offices, weigh bridges, and storage facilities. It may also mean organizations that operate or control several individual elevators in different locations. In Australia, the term describes only the lifting mechanism. See, the Aussies get it right, mate. They're not all weird about it. They're like, it's the thing that elevates the grain. It's a great elevator, a grain elevator. Before the advent of the grain elevator, grain was usually handled in bags rather than in bulk. Large quantities of loose grain. Really, they just put it in big bags, I guess, like potato sacks, but big. Dart's elevator was a major innovation. It was invented by Joseph Dart, a merchant, and Robert Dunbar, a Scottish engineer, in 1842 and 1843, in Buffalo, New York. Of course, always Buffalo. Using the steam-powered flour mills of Oliver Evans. So really 3 people involved in this hootenanny already. As their model. They invented the marine leg, which scooped loose grain out of the hulls of ships and elevated it to the top of a marine tower. Ah, there you go. Early grain elevators and bins were often built of framed or cribbed wood and were prone to fire, of course. 1899, Frank H. Peavy, the elevator king, along with Charles F. Haglin, invented the modern grain elevator. The first Peavy-Haglin experimental concrete grain elevator still stands today in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. The Peavy invented elevator was the first cylindrical concrete grain elevator in the world and is now widely used across Canadian land and the good old US of A, eh? So there you go. Grain elevator, but this is what they are today. And, these things. Long gone are these beauties. I don't know, this, again, is it just me or is there something more aesthetically pleasing about this? Maybe it's because it's so toweringly high amongst a generally flat backdrop, but often with the sort of the peaked roof and then another pitch as it widens. And again, it's got this cool machinery inside that's kind of old school, old steam power or something. I don't know. It just seems more fitting, this in the prairies, than this, or, this, or this. Maybe I'm just nostalgic. I don't know. Hey, Vaughn's in the box. Howdy, Vaughn. Good to see you. See what else we got going on here. Oh, yeah, that's right. I found this when I was looking a little more into grain elevators, because I just kind of wanted to know, okay, well, how long have these sort of been in use, at least here locally in Canada land? Never mind the concrete ones by, so-and-so and what's his name down in Minnesota, but about in my stomping grounds. So I found this article. Again, links in the description. This is from cbc.ca news. Manitoba, Canada. Oldest grain elevator. So here we go. Pierced by weathered and rusted piece. No, piece by, excuse me, a guy can't even read Canadian, eh? Piece by weathered and rusted piece, Canada's oldest grain elevator comes down. Wood beams, tin siding, even nails and other hardware being salvaged and sold. At least, some jerk that works at or owns a bank or a mortgage or a lending company is making money off of selling the, and people's nostalgia. Yeah, we're going to destroy it, but do you want to buy a couple of rusty nails? We'll put them on auction. Anyway, a Prairie Sentinel, believed to be the oldest in Canada, is taking its farewell bow. The Lake of the Woods Milling Company grain elevator in the southwest Manitoba hamlet. See, it's always these little towns that the grain elevator dies, the town dies. The town dies, the grain elevator dies. You know what I mean? Anyways, the hamlet of Alva has shouldered thrashing rains and snow and withstood the baking sun for 125 years. Now it is being eased into history board by board and nail by nail. Similar fate is coming to the former United Grain Growers elevator, built circa 1916, a stone's throw from the Lake of the Woods one. It's sad to see these symbols of Prairie Canada come down, but I am pragmatic about it, said Gordon Goldsborough, president of the Manitoba Historical Society. I realize we can only keep them if they serve a useful purpose. Having them standing there unused, rotting away, serves no one's interest. Well, yeah, but so why'd you let them go, man? Couldn't you repurpose these into, I don't know, living quarters? Imagine if you had, I don't know, a sitting room or even a bedroom, provided they weren't let go in condition too badly and you could renovate them and rezone this as residential. The train ain't whipping by and waking you up. Get it up to residential building code and you make, I don't know, let's say 3 or 4 condos in here. Imagine if this is your master bedroom. Imagine the view you'd have from these windows. But no, just let them rust until they start to lean over and then, oh, no, it's unsafe. No, it's condemned. They had been abandoned for so long, their poor condition became a public liability. Of course, there it is. Troy Angus, owner of the Den Authentic Barnwood, bought both structures last year at an auction by the municipality of Two Borders, which was trying to recoup unpaid municipal taxes. His business is to source, salvage, and sell antique wood. Angus calls it rural wood waste management. So yeah, he's going to sell it off as reclaimed lumber and nails and whatnot. And then I saw this thing. I was like, what the heck is this? This is the oldest elevator in Manitoba, 1878. Niverville, that's with a V, by the way, Niver with a V, Niverville. Don't try to get me on anything now. That's crazy! Round grain elevator was built in 1878 and was Western Canada's first commercial elevator. It was in operation until 1904. This photo is from 1911 and was no longer in use. It's already leaning like the Leaning Tower of Pizza. And here you go. There it is in better days, and there's a more traditional style. And there's what we have today. So I guess much like any other old building versus modern building, to me, more aesthetically pleasing, maybe more practical, more simple and efficient to build and maintain, and then make it too difficult. They still couldn't maintain these things, or they got lazy, or they purposely just left them become derelict. And then it's basically brutalism in terms of it's grain elevator brutalism. Brutalist architecture, grain elevator style. And, you know, the grain elevators known as the skyscrapers of the prairies. Now, the new ones basically resemble modern skyscrapers. Fugly is what a guy's trying to say. Fugly. So links in the description for that article as well. So where are we at here? About an hour. Okay, you know what? Let's call it midway through the show here. And what we'll do is we'll take a mid-show break. Give you a sneak peek at your midweek coming up this Wednesday. Some vintage footage. This one's going way back, but it has absolutely nothing to do with Alberta. Anomalous geological weird things, or grain, or elevators, or trains, or anything. It's just so happens this is going to be your midweek coming up for Wednesday. It's from 1913. And it's from Honolulu, Hawaii. Surfing in Hawaii. So it is approximately, that's just over 3 minutes long. So I'll share that with you right now. And I will be back in just over 3 minutes after the break here with the video. And then we'll have a look at some other weird stuff that I found while I was actually just doing goggle drops on grain elevators. And then I found other weirdo things. So yeah, stick around. Be right back. Cheers. All right, and we are back. Welcome back, everybody. And once again, thank you very much for shooting in and joining a fella here for another one. Frankie, New West Reset. New West Reset Live, episode 68 here tonight on the Sunday edition of the show. So happy Sunday to you. Thank you for winding down your weekend with a guy on this. It's not Friday. It's Sunday Fun Day. So thanks for joining me. We just had a look at some photographs and a little bit of the Wikipedia about grain elevators from roughly the 1870s to the 1970s. They were quite common here in Alberta, the old wooden grain elevators. And, stuff like this. These old wooden grain elevators. And they're rapidly disappearing. And, the thing is, I think they're left purposely to, in some cases, not all cases. I mean, in some cases, it's just, all right, it's time to modernize and we'll remove these because they're not being used anymore for whatever reason, right? But a lot of cases, they're, I think, allowed to become condemned or unsafe on purpose. And then, they can knock them down. Or, they mysteriously catch fire somehow. I mean, yeah, they're wood, so they'll go up easy. But rather than just, I don't know, reusing them somehow, if it's still a fairly significantly good-sized town or city even, like Calgary or Airdrie or Red Deer or any of these places, Edmonton, Lethbridge, good-sized towns and cities here in Alberta, especially if the train doesn't pass right beside it anymore, I just keep them up and repurpose them, make them into condos. You just sink a few grand or probably a couple million, let's say today's money, right? But in the 80s and 90s, when they really started disappearing quickly, a few $1,000,000 at the most. You get it up to residential code, you put a couple of condos in there. It just doesn't make any sense, Yeah, exactly, hippie. They repurpose lighthouses, churches, so why not? Teresa Lilly says it would make a neat house. People make houses out of silos. Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah. But as Vaughn, sarcastically and ironically states, they're very conscious about preservation management after carpet bombing every city on both sides of the planet during many WWs, WW1 and 2, for example, right? So, yeah, that's right. Beach blanket bingo or whatever the hell, Frankie Avalon and Annette Funiacelioio. Mickey Mouse Club, that's a whole other creepy, dark thing. But, yeah. Oh, wow. I would like to see that video. I love old trolleys and stuff like that. And Wisconsin's another anomaly too, right? Because there's a whole bunch of small cities or small towns that are removed from each other, but they're, kind of all in a row or in a line. And a lot of them were small, but they had their own little electric streetcars or trolleys or trams, whatever you want to call them. And in some cases, they went between these little cities or large towns, interurban trolleys or trams are what they were called. So it's weird. Well, half joking, but half serious, right, Jabber Jaroo? Because, I mean, first of all, you had your robber barons in terms of the railroad barons up here in Canada-Nadia land, just like in the U.S. or anywhere else in the realm, for that matter. Yeah, big oil and all the oil tycoons up here and whatnot. The cattle barons, that is a thing, and the land barons, which went hand in hand. That I know for sure. It still kind of goes on with cattle ranching, of course. So why not big grain, right? Why not big grain? Anyways, thank you once again for joining a fella here for this one. Appreciate it. If you haven't already, just as a reminder, give a fella a thumbs up. So as mentioned, there was other weird things that I noticed when I was looking around on the goggle, and on the goggle maps, right? And one of them was this weird anomaly, geographic anomaly, a weird thing going on the ground. Looking at it from, up on a, satellite photo of the Earth, on the goggle machine. I saw something and I thought to myself, what in the Sam hell is that? So, of course, I zoomed in and hooked my ocular sphericals on it. And I'm like, oh, this is weird. I'm going to have to share this on the show. So it sort of ties in with everything. So let me just pull it up here on the goggle machine to get ready. And before I do that, even, I kind of looked it up on the, I wanted to research two things. Okay. The first one is something that I've joked about before on the show. I've coined it or called it the Eye of Alberta. So let me just pull that up here and show you. All right. So it's this thing right here. Let me zoom in on it a little bit. This is Alberta, and there's Calgary. I'm way down here. There's our capital city of Alberta, our provincial capital, Edmonton. So way up in northern Alberta, there's the border to the Northwest Territories. Okay. So the Arctic Circle is just right up in here, there, eh? Or so they say. Right around here-ish. Anyway, it's right up there. And you can see it's this weird formation here, geographic formation right in northern Alberta. And to me, it looked like an eye, when you even have your eyelashes here, your upper eyelid, lower eyelid. So I jokingly called it the Eye of Alberta. Oh, that's it. Well, there you go. That's always... So when I noticed the other thing that I'm going to show you in a second, it reminded me of this thing. So I wanted to find out once and for all, what is this thing? What is it? Because when you look at it from the goggle maps, no matter if you 2D it or 3D it, it's very hard to tell if it's a depression or an elevation. You know what I mean? And even no matter from what angle you swoop and swing around on the thing, I'm like, okay, is this going down or is it lifting up? Are these fissure-like things that look like eyelashes? Let me just spin her around again here, Bod. Is this water running down into a depression, like what they would call a crater? Or is this water and moisture from these lakes up here running downward? You know what I'm saying? And it was boggling a guy's melon. I was getting baffled, bamboozled, and befuddled about the whole thing. So I thought, okay, well, let me just look into this. I got to goggle something here and figure out what's the what. You know what I'm saying? So after some very easy and quick poking around, I thought, oh, there it is. It's called the Caribou Mountains Wildlife Provincial Park. It's called the Caribou Mountain. So here it is again. Now this is an elevation map of Alberta. And this area here, that eye of Alberta, is this thing here. And apparently it's a raised plateau or a huge mesa. It's a big flat mountain is what they're trying to tell us. In some cases, they even say that it may have not at some points been completely covered by glacier, even though in other times they say that the glaciers that covered this part of North America, way up in northern Canada, was like 2 miles thick. This thing ain't 2 miles high, but somehow they're saying it may not have been completely glaciated over. But anyways, it's this thing, Caribou Mountains. And they've made this whole thing this border area, I should say, the Caribou Mountains Provincial Park. So it's a protected wildlife reserve for caribou. So I thought, finally, I know what this dang thing is now. You know what I mean? Oops, sorry. Vinny's saying use Google Earth. Yeah, well, I've looked at it on both Google Maps, Google Earth, and it was very hard to tell if it was like a crater or a depression. Because most of the time what we're told are craters are completely round. And you're like, okay, is every meteorite that's striking the earth from outer space hitting the round earth directly at what we would say is a 90-degree or what is that, perpendicular angle every time? None of them are skimming like this and causing an elongated elliptical crater? Really? So I thought it was a crater, right? But apparently, no, it's a giant raised mesa. Think Devil's Tower, Wyoming, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Beep, boop, bop, boop, beep. I'm going to build mashed potatoes to look like it and try and go crazy, right? The Richard Dreyfuss thing. But on a much more surface area, grander scale. Now, apparently, it's named the Caribou Mountain, and that Caribou Mountain Provincial Park, and it has a reserve there, is because, of course, as you would gather, I guess, from the name, is that it's caribou. They're lousy with caribou up there. So, anyways, let's have a look what I'm talking about here real quick. Of course, we'll look at the Wikipedia and see what the official story is. Caribou Mountains. Caribou Mountains are a mountain range in northern Alberta, Canada, surrounding a saucer-shaped elevated plateau that rises 700 meters or 2,300 feet above the surrounding lowlands. The Caribou Mountains reach an elevation of 1,030 meters or 3,380 feet at their highest point, making them the highest in northern Alberta. They rise north of the lower Peace River and are bounded to the north and east by Wood Buffalo National Park, because we call bison buffalo up here in Canada land, because we're kind of a little dopey that way there, bud? Anyway, the area was unglaciated during the last glacial period. I guess glacial minimum when the glaciers weren't as big? I don't know, because that just doesn't seem to make sense. It's only like 3,400 feet high. So the glacier would have had to have been less than that, is what they're saying. How could they possibly know how tall the glacier was? By the size of the giant rocks that they left all over the prairies, the glacial anomalies, that's fun to say, with the big cracks in them, apparently? Who knows? I don't know. Because of their unique environment, the Caribou Mountains Wildland Park, 2,280 square miles, was created in 2001 as part of the Special Places Program, largest provincial wildland park in the province. Wow, it's bigger than Banff. Its fragile ecosystem contains sensitive wetlands, permafrost habitat, and rich bird breeding habitat. Population of 120, up to 120 wood bison. There it is, eh? An endangered species lives in the Windsor Lake area. Small groups of up to 15 animals. And of course, there's the boreal woodland caribou that live up there. So if you don't know what a caribou is, it's a reindeer, man. It's a reindeer. It's just that's what we call the reindeer, the Pulsana sleigh. We call them caribou. The boreal woodland caribou, subjected to recent taxonomic revision, see reindeer taxonomy, also known as the eastern woodland caribou. There you go. Boreal forest caribou and forest dwelling caribou is a North American subspecies of reindeer. So it's a kind of reindeer. They're the same thing, or caribou in North America. So the type of caribou that live in the Eye of Alberta are a subspecies of woodland caribou, or what are known as reindeer. They're found primarily in Canada with small populations in the United States. Unlike the porcupine caribou, it sounds terrible. I mean, a caribou is foreboding enough with those crazy antlers, but a porcupine caribou? What does that even mean? They're just from the Porcupine Hills region, that's all. And barren ground caribou, not good eating around where they live, considering they habitate barren ground? Anyway, they're primarily but not always sedentary. So the third largest caribou ecotype is the boreal woodland area. So yeah, that's this whole area here, northern Alberta, and that's where that Eye of Alberta is. So it's the perfect environment for Santa's reindeer up there, eh, in the Eye of Alberta. And of course, the buffalo, and you have all kinds of buffalo rubbing stones found all over Alberta too. Giant glacial deposits, glacial anomalies, glacial erratic stones, just deposited from the receding glaciers that the buffalo find when they're itchy and rub on them and polish them and wear them down and polish them as they rub against them, apparently over hundreds, if not thousands of years. And take these big giant boulders the size of houses and eventually wear them down to little nubs, sometimes as small as a smart car. Remember those little, what were they, BMW smart cars? Anyway, but even though this mountain plateau was not covered in the glacier, it still left glacial erratic deposits for the buffalo to rub against. Anyway, that whole narrative is crazy. Now, I've never been up there, but I mean, obviously, it is an elevated plateau of mountain ranges up there, and it's got a sensitive ecosystem and all that. It's got some isolated lakes and wetlands up there. You know, there's like the peat moss and all that up there. Surprised there's no moose up there. Moose would love it up there. Maybe it's just too cold, eh? I don't know. But anyway, that's the caribou in the Eye of Alberta there in the Caribou Mountain. So I thought that was kind of weird. But I'm glad I finally figured out what it was. But that wasn't the thing that I found on the Goggle Maps when I was looking at grain elevators. What I found just reminded me of the Eye of Alberta, but this thing is even more unusual. And I've tried looking into it, and bubkis. I can't find a thing about what it is at all. So let me just pull that up here on the Goggle Maps here, and Just see what's what. Yeah, here it is. All right. Oh, look, a siren. Or not look. Listen. Look. You can't look at the siren. Listen. There it is. Shout out to Terry Light with the sirens on the show. Every time. Every time. Thank you very much, Vaughn. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. That's mighty kind of you. Appreciate it. First couple of times, parents took me to from Wisconsin to Idaho many times. Saw Yellowstone twice a trip. Hate that place. It's beautiful, but it stinks and it could blow any day. Yeah, that's what they're saying about what is that? The geyser. The geyser there? It's could go at any time. They tell us. I mean, I don't know. It could be just a fear tactic, but I mean, you never know, right? Anyways, so again, here we are, southern Alberta. Here's where I live. So I've pinned this area here, and what it is a series of from roughly this center point, give or take, right? Is a series of concentric circles that go all the way around, roughly. I mean, they do go around lakes and so on and so forth. But for the most part, you have these circular. Now, they're, as far as I could tell, they're roadways, but I can't. The goggle won't let me drop a guy on it, no matter how I try. And there's no point of interest sightseeing thing that I can drop my guy onto anywhere close enough to have a peekaboo at what in the Sam hell is going on with this thing. Again, we're on the goggle earth here, so we can look at it at an angle. Now, it does go over some hills and dips and not high hills or anything, but this whole area, first of all, looks like a surface of a golf ball. It's pockmarked to hell. Like pockmarks and pockmarks. Now, they'll say these are like formerly, when the land was wetter, these were like bogs and peat moss and muskeg and so on. And now it's sort of like semi-arid. It's semi-desert. It's southern Alberta. But you can see it. There's one here, then another one here, and it goes all the way around and reconnects on itself. Then I thought, okay, well, that goes up pretty far. But no, then here's another one that goes through all this. And again, it doesn't necessarily maintain a perfect distance from its center point of origin. You know what I'm saying? It's not like somebody drew it, scratched it with a compass. It does deviate around some geographical obstacles. You can see this whole area just looks weird. This looks weird. Now, some of these are access to oil rigs. Some of these are, because we're zoomed in quite a bit, so some of these are actually cattle trails and so on and so forth. But as far as I can tell, this is all these giant circles are roads. And they just keep going out. Here's another one way out here. It's way down here. Now, I have no idea. Alberta's pretty, it's farmland and or oil land. So you could see it's quilt work, right? It's parceled off. Different farmers own these parcels or sections of land, and they have their assorted grains that they grow. Some of this you can't really grow much for whatever reason, or maybe there's oil. Like these are a bunch of oil wells here. Okay, and that's fine. That totally makes sense. I've been in places like this many times. But the circular rings coming out from this area just struck me as so odd. I don't know what to make of it. Let me know in the box, in the chat, what you like. They're obviously some kind of roadway. They match other roads. I just can't Google drop my map guy down in there. But why the purpose of making circular roads? Everything else is grid because everything's sectioned off as farmland or oil, but a ring, then another ring. And I'm like, surely there couldn't be another ring. Okay, yep, no, there's another ring. And even portions of other rings. But they get broken up a little bit here because the terrain is kind of wonky or mountainous. But here's another ring. And then out here, here's another one. And then here's another one. I'd never noticed this before. And I've messed around on these, on the Goggle machine with the maps and Goggle Maps, Goggle Earth quite a bit. And I've seen other channels do that too. But I've never seen this before. Yeah, see, I've seen that sort of thing. Where it looks like the grid of a town, like city streets. But it very much, you could tell by looking at it that city street neighborhoods are laid out like circuitry. And this, some could say, oh, look, that's circuit board. But these I know are oil. They're pumping oil or they're drilling for oil here. Now, maybe there's something to do with the circuit board earth, which is a theory that I could totally get behind. I could see many instances of evidence that would support that theory. So who's to say that there isn't some sort of link between the black gold, the petroleum, the oil there that they're pulling out of the ground or pumping out of the ground, supposedly? There might be some association between that and the fried circuit board earth, especially considering this whole part of southern Alberta is fried and cooked out from about Drumheller all the way down here. This giant sort of diagonal swath of land across Alberta that's not very green. Like all of this just looks all cooked out. But these circular rings that keep going out, from here all the way down to here, all the way out from here. Let's just be conservative and go to here. 32.4, basically 32 and a half kilometers. 32 and a half kilometers. And that's a lot. Let's just convert that here to miles, right? Just for, even though I'm a Canadian and I'm used to metric in a lot of ways, I can visually picture miles in my head more easily. So what did I say? 33? Really, by the way? Is that what it was? 33? Or am I misremembering that distance? Yep, Kathy says, yep, 33. 33 point whatever. So call it 33 because that's creepy enough. 33 kilometers or kilometers, if you like, is 20 miles. 33 even is 20.5 miles. So that thing's 20 miles across that large circle. Although in poking around a bit more, I could probably look at it a little more closely and maybe find other rings further out. But even just to kind of, like I said, keep it fairly conservative. So we're not talking, that's a few hundred yards or 5 miles. I mean, that's 20 miles, man. It's just weird. And then I noticed there's really no towns in here at all. There's really no towns. There's oil rigs, there's oil, like oil drills and oil pumps. There's an area farm here. And again, they're just the land, and we've kind of looked at this area before and these anomalies. And so is Bernie on his channel, right? He's looked quite deeply into different petroglyphs and so on here in southern Alberta. But this, I mean, I don't even know if Bernie's even noticed this. I have no idea. He may have, and I just missed it. But let me look how far out this goes, man. So I started sort of poking around in here, and I was looking for farms or towns or trying to figure out why they would build it in circles instead of gridding it out like everything else. The only weird thing that I found was this. I have no idea what these things are. It's like a circular earthenwork wall with, I don't know if it's canals or roads or, so I don't know if these are made to capture water, like water reservoirs. You know, they'll dam up these portions. Maybe this is part of the, because we've looked at old canals here in southern Alberta on this channel before too. So is this part of the canal network and an offshoot? And they bring it into here, and once it's full, they dam this up. You know, and or if they need more, they have multiple reservoirs that hold water. Like I don't know what these are. My granddaddy had a farm. My great granddaddy had a farm, and I've never seen these before. These I think are cars and trucks or junk, maybe some pipe, plumbing equipment. I don't know, garbage out here. I don't know what that is, but you can almost see there's something going around here, and then there's some kind of, again, it's not going to let me drop the guy, but these are just weird to me. Very unusual. You can see some of these lead to these, but these look barren, and these look like there's vegetation in them too. Now, I know that there is an irrigation canal system all through southern Alberta. It's just to help irrigate the farms. It makes sense. Alberta ain't the only place in the realm that does that. You all know this. Some of them are more like irrigation ditches, and some of them are fairly wide canals. So again, this could be part of that old canal system. Some of it is no longer in use. But it just kind of goes all the way around this, and then there's all these weird things that come in, and it looks like one feeds another. Some of them are connected. This looks like it goes, this might be a road, and this goes underneath the road. See, I have no idea what the hell's going on, man. You tell me and we'll both know. You know what I'm saying? Very, very strange. Very strange. Oh, yeah, no worries, hippie. No worries. Link away. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the links that you share. So yeah, that was the only thing that I found that was really weird in here, other than the fact that there were no towns or even much in terms of residences, farms or ranches. There's a bunch of Hutterite colonies all in around here, but there's really nothing in here. I'm like, well, what the F? So then as I was zooming out and poking around, I'll tell you one thing, there's a lot of cemeteries. And I'm not talking about, you know, the city of Medicine Hat Cemetery and the 3 cemeteries it might have. I'm talking about cemeteries that are just like out in the, again, I don't even think I can, like, nobody drives down this road enough to even bother putting it on the Goggle Street View. You see what I'm saying? There's some St. Mary's Church, just this little tiny rural church in farmland, middle of nowhere, Alberta. And then there's cemetery. So I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, sure. And then there's some family cemeteries. I thought that was kind of weird. But then there's also cemeteries that there aren't even any towns or churches nearby. It's just a cemetery. Like this, like Cravath Corners Cemetery. Like, and it's just here on Range Road 113. But there's nothing. There's no town, or there's Wardlow here, I guess. But I'm just like, what is with all these? This town, Patricia, okay, and then there's their cemetery. But what's with all of these cemeteries, man? Nothing inside the circle, and outside the circle, a buttload of little. Well, this one, at least we can drop the guy down. A buttload of these little, in the middle of nowhere, cemeteries. Now, again, if it's just outside of a town and there's a church, I get it. Sure, country folk, farmers, they got to have their cemeteries too. But usually there would be like the county church or something. But a lot of these, there's absolutely bubkiss. Just thought it was really, really weird. I'm trying to find an example. I should have made more specific notes, but I'm trying to find an example where some of these cemeteries, this might even be it. There isn't even a road going there anymore. Like it looks like this is like it's not even a gravel road. You know what I mean? It's like one of those rut roads. You see what I'm saying? Like this is a fence. This is a fence around the cemetery. But the only road around here is like a cart rut style road. And then I don't know what this is. Maybe the foundation remnants of the old church or chapel, or you know what I mean? It's just weird, man. It's weird. It could be too, right? The church burned down or closed, so the cemetery is still there, but the church or the chapel or what have you is gone. But I mean, all of these hearts are all cemeteries. You know, that circle anomaly thing we were looking at is right here. So these, and after a while, I'm just like, I can't look anymore. But I'm like, you know, all these, like, sure, Oyen is a town. It's going to have at least one cemetery. Sure. You know, but like, I could randomly pick like a zoom in on some random area like here, and just there's a cemetery pops up, and I'm like, are you kidding me? So I just found that to be very unusual, very odd that there's just so many, and so many in places where there aren't even towns. And in some cases, the closer you get to these circles, there aren't even a lot of farms. But this is a cemetery. This is a cemetery. And there's a whole schwack over here for some reason, right on the border to Saskatchewan, Canada's funnest province to say. Saskatchewan. Say it with me now. Saskatchewan. Like, why do you need a cemetery here? Cemetery here. Cemetery here. Cemetery here. For what? This? It's a gas plant. These are a bunch of gas companies, oil and gas companies. Maybe that says something. I don't know. But there's like nothing here. What they're calling McNeil is just like a gas plant work town. Like they don't even have a Canada Post. Like if you zoom in enough and they have a Canada Post outlets, then it'll pop up, but there's nothing. There's nothing. But around this, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 cemeteries, and there's down here, there's like clusters or cloisters of them, man. I mean, these borders are arbitrary too. I mean, this is modern day Saskatchewan, but I mean, at one time this was Alberta and Saskatchewan, part of what was the Northwest Territory, and British Columbia was part of the Oregon Territory. So, I mean, I kind of stopped at the border, but I mean, there's a couple beyond the border. These two are like right next to each other. There's two cemeteries within, I don't know, a couple of miles of each other. This sort of makes sense because this is an old fort, and then this is, you know, a Northwest Mounted Police, you know, the Mounties are federal police force, national police force. This is supposedly one of their old forts, and then so that would be the Mounties Cemetery. Okay, sure. I could see that, but I mean, in so many cases, they're just right next to each other, man. I just found that to be so strange. Actually, good point, Sage. There's airstrips. Like little towns have an airport, and then other places that are bigger, close by, don't have an airport. Like I think Tabor has an airport. Oh, it's another place smaller than Tabor that has an airport, but Tabor doesn't. I'm trying to remember which one it is now. I didn't really bookmark airports, but yeah. I mean, and some of them are Canadian Air Force and actually Royal Air Force, British Air Force training bases that have airstrips. But yeah, that's another thing too, is airstrips or airports out in the middle of nowhere. A town of 500 people has an airport. 20 miles away, a town of 5,000 people does not have an airport. But yeah, this was the one that really bogged my brain. Is what in the hell? Like, even if they are roads, sure, I'm willing to accept that they're roads. Why did you build circular roads? It doesn't make sense. I'm baffled. I have no idea. Like I said, if you can figure it out, you tell me and we both know. If you're watching this after the live, after the fact, A, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And number two, let me know in the comments what you think this circular anomaly roadway thing is. Is it a roadway? I can't confirm or deny. I can't drop the guy down there. The closest I can get is a major road here, or like a freeway, but I can't see it from there. You know what I mean? Look at it from street view from here, and all I see is this intersection. Sorry, it's blurry. It's acting up tonight for some reason. I see this intersection, but I can't tell that this is a giant circular road going 33 kilometers, 20 miles in circumference. Or not in circumference, in diameter. Excuse me. So, oh, thank you. Thank you, hippie. Not sure what's going on with that. They're not liking it for some reason. They're not liking it. Although we are supposed to have clouds rolling in and some rain showers. So it could be a weather related thing with the interwebs here. Sorry about that. But yeah, this just puzzled me. It's a big circle and nothing in it except these other weird things. And then just outside of the largest ring, start seeing all these little cemeteries everywhere. And I just found that to be very odd. And yeah, you get a few towns and you get the reservation, the reserve here. It just struck me as very odd. And of course, the Eye of Alberta, well, mystery solved. that it is in fact not a giant crater, which I wasn't sure of, but I kind of thought it was. I don't remember if I actually stated that I thought it was a crater, but it definitely looked like a crater. But nope, it's a big flat mountain, a big mesa, reindeer on it. So there you go. That's a bit of a potpourri of weird stuff, anomalous areas in Alberta. I don't know. Again, I'm not proposing that ring on that map and the Eye of Alberta and disappearing grain elevators are all connected. These are just unusual things that I spotted when I was looking at other unusual things, you know. And again, other channels may have looked at those series of circular rings, and maybe they found something about it. I can't find anything about it. I mean, the next step for me is to literally make a phone call, like pick up the cell phone and call Transportation Alberta, and and say like, hey man, like roughly these coordinates. There's these ring roads, for lack of a better term, but it's rings within rings within rings within rings. Which is funny because you think 33 kilometers. 33 is one of those goofy numbers that our buddies the Freemasons seem to love so much. And we always talk about how there are circles within circles, or deeper secrets that are revealed to the initiates as they move within the degrees or through the innermost circles of Freemasonry. So maybe that's a stretch. I don't know. It's definitely something to think about. Well, Crow's Nest Pass is beauty. Yeah, Crow's Nest Pass is a beautiful part of the province. You've got the town of Frank and the Crow's Nest Pass itself there. And actually, Crow's Nest Pass used to be 3 separate towns that the names escape me. Frank, Crow's Nest Pass, and something else. But now the whole area is basically known as Crow's Nest Pass. But yeah, it's beautiful out there. Southwestern Alberta, the foothills, the Rockies are there. Turtle Mountain that slid down and buried the town of Frank in, what was that, 1905? At like 4 o'clock in the morning? Or was it 1904 at 5 in the morning? Something like that. Did a show on that too. Anyway, so I think I'm getting ready to wind this thing down for this evening here. So once again, thank you very much for winding down your weekend on the Sunday edition of New West Reset Live, episode 68 here tonight. Anomalous areas in Alberta. The quickly disappearing grain elevators, and then some strange geographic anomalies in Alberta. You know, a guy could spend hours goofing around on the Goggle Earth and Goggle Maps just looking at weird stuff, right? And there are guys out there that are great at spending hours doing that, and they find a lot of weird stuff. So quickly, as a reminder, of course, back to your regular schedule here on the channel. So Sunday, this Sunday is live, but normally Sunday is boots on the ground. So Wednesday, you'll get your vintage footage midweek. I gave you a sneak peek of that, the Hawaiian surfing. I will see you Friday for New West Reset Live 69er. And then you'll get boots on the ground on your regularly scheduled Sunday. I missed you guys on Friday. It was weird. It felt weird. It felt odd, not going to lie. I was visiting with relatives and the whole bit, and family and extended family and friends and the whole bit, after the graduation ceremony Friday afternoon. I kept thinking I was forgetting something. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like a guy's forgetting something here. What's I'm like, right, it's Friday. Dang it. But that just made me look forward to Sunday. Sunday fun day today, this evening. That much more. So thanks for bearing with me with the temporary schedule, if you like, change. And thank you for joining me on this slightly later time slot as well. I actually probably could have started at my normal 5 p.m. Mountain Time start, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't exactly sure when we were going to be leaving Pincher Creek and coming back to Calgary. As it turns out, we left at noon, but I mean, had we left at 3, I wouldn't have made it by 5, or it would have been cutting it close. So thank you for the different day, joining me on a different day at a later time. I appreciate all of that support. Thank you very, very much. Again, links for everything below that we discussed and looked at tonight, as well as my location map and links to the deets to all my other socials. Is that what the kids say? I don't know. The digits to my other social network platforms. Email, PayPal, all kinds of stuff like that there. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Until the next one, take care out there and have yourselves a good one. And I think that is going to seal the deal here tonight for Frankie, New West Reset. So take care out there, everybody. Thanks again. And we'll see you live Friday. Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's a mystery. It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma.